When you think of the American West, you probably picture them, hardy, resilient burros roaming free. But, the story of California's wild burros is way more complicated than it looks. Okay, let's get into this amazing story of survival, controversy, and, believe it or not, redemption. For this whole breakdown, we're leaning on some really deep reporting from Shasta Unfiltered. They've laid out the entire complex history of these incredible animals. The source paints this really powerful picture, doesn't it? You can almost feel that desert heat and see these desert ghosts, as they're sometimes called, just moving across the land. It's a very romantic, very powerful image. And boom, there's the big question. Because right behind that romantic image is a really serious debate. This is where historical legacy smacks right into environmental balance. All right, so to really get a grip on what's happening today, we've got to rewind the clock a bit and figure out how these animals even ended up in the wild to begin with. Yeah, their story doesn't start out in the wild. It actually kicks off with them as, believe it or not, work colleagues during one of the wildest times in California history, the gold rush. Now, what's so fascinating here is how this shows a problem that just brews over time. See, back in 1849, these burros were absolutely essential. But then, as the mines dried up, these super hardy animals were just let go. And with no natural predators out there, their populations just started to grow and then really grow. By the 1970s, things were so out of control that a federal law was needed just to try and manage them. And if you're wondering why this is such an urgent issue, here it is. Their herds can literally double in size every 4 to 5 years. That can overwhelm an ecosystem incredibly fast. This isn't a slow problem anymore. It's an exponential one. So with that kind of explosive growth, you can bet the government had to step in. But as we're about to see, the cure has become just as complicated and just as controversial as the problem itself. The key idea here is something the Bureau of Land Management, or BLM, calls the appropriate management level, the AML. Basically, it's the magic number. It's the number of animals a specific piece of land can support without everything getting out of whack. In this chart, it just lays the whole problem out perfectly. The target for all of California is about 2,200 burros, but the real number, it's estimated to be over 3,000, and it's still going up. That gap right there, that's where all the trouble starts. So what does the government do with all these extra animals? Well, the BLM rounds them up, and the numbers, they get pretty staggering. Nationwide, they're holding about 64,000 wild horses and burros in facilities, all waiting for some kind of solution. And paying to house those 64,000 animals? Get ready for this. It costs taxpayers a whopping $153 million every single year. That's a huge price tag for a program that's just trying to tread water, which is what makes this next number so wild. After spending all that money to care for them, the BLM offers these burros up for adoption for as little as $25. I mean, the economic disconnect there is just massive. But here's the really tough part of the story. The source reports that even with federal protections, there are loopholes in the system and illegal activity that mean many of these animals tragically end up in the slaughter pipeline. It's a grim reality that makes the whole management effort even more complicated. Okay, but this story isn't all doom and gloom and government stats. No way. There's a whole other side to this, where a network of really passionate rescue organizations are stepping up to write a totally new chapter for these burros. I mean, we're talking about dozens of rescue groups and sanctuaries all over the country that are right there on the front lines. They're working with the feds, they're intercepting burros from bad situations, and they're giving them the care they need to get a real second chance. So what does that second chance actually look like? Well, this is where the story gets really cool. These rescued animals are finding new jobs, valuable roles, not just as pets, but as working partners all over again. Check this out. One of their most incredible new jobs is as livestock guardians. For ranchers, it turns out adopting a burro can be a genius move. They have this natural hatred for coyotes and other predators, so they'll protect a herd of sheep or goats. Plus, they live for decades and form these really tight bonds with the animals they're guarding. And hey, it's not just for big-time ranchers either. For anyone who's just got a little bit of land, burros are amazing. They're smart, they're affectionate, they act like natural lawnmowers, and they're incredibly gentle with kids. They're finding a whole new purpose as part of the family. This line from the source it perfectly sums up this whole journey. The same animals that were cast aside by prospectors more than a century ago are now being rediscovered as treasures, as guardians, companions, and friends. It's just a fantastic redemption story. And so, at the end of the day, we're left with this really big question, right? The wild burro is a living, breathing piece of California's history, but its presence also creates real challenges for a delicate ecosystem. Figuring out how to honor that legacy while also protecting the landscape? Well, that's the great challenge for the future.